book is an account of historical reconstruction of the Colombian nation. But at the same time, you tell the story through three families, especially through Gabriel Santoro, who starts his investigation in order to find out about his father's life after the mysterious death.
Yes.
So it's actually a desperate attempt of a son to find out who his father was.
Yes.
And I was wondering, what is your personal understanding of history? And before you answer, I want to remind you that in 2008, you told at the Pan American Center, you quote Balzac saying novels are the private histories of nations.
Yeah. Yes, well, I've always thought novels about history. I always said The Informers is not really a novel about history as such, but it's about the past. The past, our private past as individuals, in this novel takes the shape of a historical character. But it's not really a novel about history. My next novel is, for instance. But I'm very interested in the idea that history is a narrative. History is a tale told by somebody who when they told this story, had a political agenda or political interests, or were interested in suppressing certain information and highlighting other informations. So perhaps one of the good things novels can do, one of the justifications of writing novels, if writing novels needs a justification, is to confront that version of things. Is to remember what, let's call it the powers that be, what they want forgotten. This is one thing great novels do for me. Recover the individual, the private aspect of the past and confront it with the public official version. And this is what I try to do.
You say the novel is about the past. I agree with you, but I also see the present in it as well.
Sure.
The novel was published 3 years after September 11th, and I know it's never explicit, but to what extent do you think it's also respond to contemporary terror?
Well, it's a very good question. I've never really thought about September 11 in that context, because this conversation I had with this lady took place in 1999, and I started thinking about the novel way before September 11, although I began writing it in 2002. So September 11 must have been somewhere in the back of my head, although what I was thinking about in terms of the relationship between the present and the past was the relationship between these things that happened in Colombia in the 1940s and the violence I grew up with, growing up in Colombia, in Bogota, in the 1980s and the 1990s. I left Colombia in 1996. At that moment we had just finished a very troubled decade in which the Colombian government was at war with the drug cartels. So I grew up in a capital where bombs were going off the whole time, and I grew up with the terrorist violence. So one of the subterranean strands of the novel is to find if there is actually a relationship between that past, that Colombian past in the 40s, and what I had to live through.
One of your major topics, which comes through in your second novel, The Secret History of Costaguana as well, is betrayal. It's about failed loyalty, about the shadows of the truth. What exactly fascinates you about these topics? Did you experience betrayal yourself a lot in your life?
No, not really. I suppose I have. I just haven't found about it. But I think when historical conflicts, when you focus on that crossroads between history and the private stories of individuals, that crossroads between the big events, that shape our lives without us realizing it, and our small intimate existences. More often than not, betrayal takes a part in the whole thing. Betrayal is the way this conflict manifests itself. Um, and morally, it's very interesting, and great works of fiction have been written about this, because the situation puts characters in a very interesting place for the novelist to explore. Betrayal, I think, allows you to ask very interesting questions, and I've always said that this is what novels do. They don't give answers. They don't give easy answers. They try to ask the most interesting questions possible. And I think that betrayal is one of those subjects, if you want to call it that, that allow you to explore this in a great way.
Okay. Juan, let's talk a bit about your second novel, the Secret History of Costaguana, that you're going to present actually today at the Warwick Art Center. It's set at the beginning of the 20th century, and it's about a real figure. It's about the author Joseph Conrad, and he's writing a book about a fictional place in Southern America called Costaguana.
Yes.
You actually have a very special relationship to Joseph Conrad. You wrote a biography about him. So I'd love to know, who is Joseph Conrad? I mean, what inspires you to constantly write about him?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to say I wouldn't call this little humble book I wrote a biography. It's just like a personal version of the life of Joseph Conrad. But when I was writing that book, I remembered, through the research I had to do, obviously, I remembered this little sort of myth that has always existed in Colombian history, that Joseph Conrad actually visited Colombian coast when he was 19, smuggling guns for the conservative Colombian government. This we don't have any proof of, but we do have proof that later on, when he was writing Nostromo, his great novel about this fictitious South American country, he asked a Colombian diplomat living in London to help him get information about Colombia and Latin America. So the pretext in my novel is that this Colombian guy, José Altamirano, arrives in London in 1903, and he is sought after by this diplomat and by Conrad, or by this diplomat who helped Conrad write Nostromo. He tells his life story to Conrad, and then witnesses how Conrad doesn't even include him in his novel. He has distorted everything. He has called Colombia Costaguana. He has called the Colombian province of Panama at that time, he has called it Sulaco in the novel. And he has eliminated José Altamirano, my character, from his fiction. So my character is somebody who comes to take revenge on that elimination and to tell his life story.